Conservation. The word evokes images of dedicated individuals fighting to protect endangered species and pristine ecosystems. We often view conservation efforts as inherently positive, a beacon of hope in a world grappling with environmental degradation. However, the reality of conservation is far more nuanced. While many efforts undoubtedly yield positive results, some inadvertently harm the very wildlife they aim to protect. These unintended consequences often stem from a lack of understanding of complex ecological systems, inadequate engagement with local communities, and a failure to consider the broader environmental context. It's crucial to acknowledge these shortcomings, not to discourage conservation efforts, but to refine them for greater effectiveness. One striking example of conservation gone awry is the case of elephant populations in southern Africa. In an attempt to reduce human-elephant conflict, fences were erected to separate elephants from farmland and communities. While well-intentioned, these fences restricted elephant movement, leading to overgrazing within the confined areas. This, in turn, degraded the habitat, impacting not only elephants but also other species dependent on the same resources. The fences, meant to mitigate conflict, ironically exacerbated the issue by concentrating elephants in smaller areas, increasing competition for resources and potentially leading to heightened aggression. This illustrates how even seemingly straightforward solutions can have unforeseen and detrimental consequences. Another case highlighting the potential pitfalls of conservation involves the introduction of non-native fish species for sport fishing. Proponents argued that stocking lakes and rivers with these fish would boost tourism and provide recreational opportunities. However, these introduced species often outcompeted or preyed upon native fish populations, disrupting the delicate balance of the ecosystem. In some cases, this led to the decline or even extinction of indigenous species, severely impacting biodiversity. This example showcases how actions taken with the best intentions can have cascading negative effects on ecosystems, particularly when they involve introducing species outside their natural range. Conservation efforts often focus on protecting a single charismatic species without fully considering the intricate web of relationships within an ecosystem. This narrow approach can inadvertently harm other species and disrupt the ecological balance. For instance, protecting a predator species without considering its prey base can lead to overpopulation of the predator and subsequent depletion of prey species. This imbalance can trigger a domino effect, impacting other species within the food web and destabilizing the entire ecosystem. This interconnectedness highlights the need for a holistic approach to conservation, one that considers the complex interactions between species and their environment. Section 5. The missing voices of local communities. A recurring theme in conservation failures is the lack of engagement with local communities who live in and depend upon the ecosystems in question. These communities are often the first to notice changes in the environment, whether it's a decline in a particular species or the effects of climate change. Their daily lives are intertwined with the land, making their insights invaluable. These communities often possess a wealth of knowledge about local species and their interactions, knowledge that is crucial for effective conservation. This traditional ecological knowledge, passed down through generations, includes understanding animal behaviors, plant uses, and seasonal patterns that are not always evident to outside researchers. Ignoring this knowledge can lead to misinformed decisions and interventions that disrupt traditional practices and harm both the environment and the livelihoods of local people. For example, conservation projects that exclude local input may inadvertently destroy medicinal plants or disrupt hunting and fishing practices that are vital for community sustenance. For instance, establishing protected areas without consulting local communities can restrict access to resources and sacred sites, causing economic hardship and cultural disruption. This can lead to conflicts and a lack of support for conservation efforts, ultimately undermining the goals of protecting biodiversity. Effective conservation requires respectful collaboration with local communities, recognizing their rights, knowledge, and role as stewards of their land. By involving them in decision-making processes, conservation initiatives can be more sustainable and equitable, ensuring that both the environment and the people who depend on it thrive. Section 6. Conservation's blind spot, the bigger picture. Conservation efforts often focus solely on protecting specific species or habitats without addressing the larger-scale threats driving environmental degradation. This narrow focus can render conservation efforts ineffective in the face of systemic issues like climate change, pollution, and deforestation. For example, protecting a forest fragment from logging while ignoring the impacts of climate change might offer only temporary respite. Rising temperatures and altered rainfall patterns could ultimately lead to the forest's demise, despite local conservation efforts. Addressing the root causes of biodiversity loss requires a shift from a species-centric to a systems-thinking approach, tackling the broader socio-economic and political factors driving environmental destruction. Section 7. Towards a more effective conservation. The examples highlighted above underscore the need for a more nuanced and comprehensive approach to conservation. Instead of relying solely on conventional methods, we must adopt strategies that are adaptable, context-specific, and informed by a deep understanding of ecological complexities. This involves moving away from a command-and-control approach to one that embraces flexibility and adaptive management. It requires constant monitoring, evaluation, and willingness to adjust strategies based on new information and changing circumstances. By acknowledging that ecosystems are dynamic and constantly evolving, we can move towards conservation efforts that are more responsive and effective in the long term. Section 8. The power of traditional knowledge. One often overlooked but invaluable resource for effective conservation is the traditional ecological knowledge held by indigenous communities and local populations. This knowledge is not just a collection of facts, but a deep understanding of the natural world passed down through generations. It encompasses everything from medicinal uses of plants to the migratory patterns of animals. These communities have lived in and managed their environments for generations, accumulating a wealth of knowledge about local species, ecosystems, and sustainable practices. Their relationship with nature is symbiotic, meaning they understand the delicate balance required to maintain healthy ecosystems. Integrating this traditional knowledge into conservation planning can provide crucial insights into species behavior, habitat management, and the potential impacts of interventions. For example, indigenous fire management techniques have been shown to reduce the risk of devastating wildfires. It can also foster a sense of ownership and responsibility among local communities, enhancing the long-term success of conservation efforts. When people feel connected to the land and its preservation, they are more likely to engage in sustainable practices. By recognizing and valuing traditional ecological knowledge, we can bridge the gap between scientific and local knowledge systems, creating a more holistic and effective approach to conservation. This collaboration not only enriches scientific research but also empowers indigenous communities, ensuring their voices are heard and respected in the global conversation on conservation. Section 9. A plea for humility in conservation. The unintended consequences of some conservation efforts serve as a stark reminder of the complexity of ecological systems and the limitations of human understanding. Often, well-meaning interventions can disrupt the delicate balance of nature, leading to outcomes that are far from what was intended. For instance, introducing a new species to control pests can sometimes result in the new species becoming invasive, causing more harm than good. It's a call for humility in our approach to conservation, recognizing that we don't always have all the answers, and that interventions can have unforeseen and detrimental effects. This humility should drive us to continuously learn and adapt our strategies, ensuring that we are not repeating the mistakes of the past. By acknowledging our limitations, we can foster a more thoughtful and effective approach to preserving our natural world. Moving forward, conservation must be rooted in rigorous scientific research, informed by local knowledge, and guided by a deep respect for the intricate web of life. This means engaging with local communities who have lived in harmony with their environment for generations and can offer invaluable insights. It also means investing in long-term studies that can provide a deeper understanding of ecological dynamics. It's time to acknowledge past mistakes, learn from them, and strive for conservation efforts that are truly beneficial for both wildlife and people. This involves creating adaptive management plans that can be adjusted as new information becomes available, ensuring that our actions are always based on the best available science. The future of conservation hinges on our ability to act with greater awareness, collaboration, and humility, ensuring that our efforts to protect nature truly serve their intended purpose. By working together and respecting the complexity of natural systems, we can create a sustainable future where both humans and wildlife can thrive.